Danny, you got them all fired up, ready to go?
And
Who cares about that?
Because this is what's going to come out of the commission.
That's what they're talking. That's all they're talking about.
Why? What do you want to talk about?
Explosion.
Okay, welcome to Buds with Suds, and I think this is our fourth roundtable. I'm here with Dennis Doris, Katie O'Leary, and Danny Ginivan. And these three came in to talk about the Recovery Coach Commission that was on May 20th. One of the things that I did want to play, I want to play a clip from, I think it was our last podcast where I had Katie on, and things got a little weird at the end. I don't know if they were weird. Do you think they were weird or?
No, I think they were pretty on point. We were just uncomfortable.
Stumbling over some words. So let me just play that clip to remind people.
We were talking a little bit the other day about trainers and facilitators, not necessarily for BSAS or High Point or AdCare or CARC, whatever, but like, how do they vet them? That's my question. Because watching certain people out in the community, like I said, I'm extremely observant. And if I'm questioning your ethics or boundaries, how can you be teaching ethics and boundaries to other people?
Okay, so that was Katie. That was episode 17. What were you getting at?
Yeah, that sounded pretty
pretty obvious. Pretty on point.
It was pretty cut and dry, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, it came from a conversation that I had with Dennis earlier that day, and
Well, so what exactly are we talking about here?
All right. Can I just?
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
Dennis.
I was at the commission meeting on the 20th, and I know I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but one of the things that was brought up was about creating a board or kind of regulating the training process, that type of stuff. And one of the panelists, Cheryl Ocean, I have nothing against her, but I do not agree with what she said. She said that, anyone can go to grad school, so why can't it? Anyone should be able to get any certificate. So basically, she was just saying anyone should be able to do this anytime, and part of it then falls on the consumer.
Well, apparently Stanford, you can pay $1 million and get a degree, right?
So yeah, but come on, like when you go to grad school, you're being instructed by people that have been experienced in the field, worked, you've gone through college, high school. Like, we're talking about people that might not even be clean, might have no lived experience, taking a training from Joe the plumber that's now a trainer.
Or ham sandwich.
Yeah, like that's what we're talking about right now. That's like I have a friend who went down to Connecticut and he's opening a recovery center and he's training volunteer. Like he went and I know the quality of his training probably isn't up to what we would. He was calling me and asking me for like ideas that he should be telling the people he's training and stuff. And that's like, to me, that's what we're talking about. It's not the same as grad school when you can just come out of detox, pay $600, $200, whatever, and take a training.
I didn't say it was just
No, but that's what people on the commission are saying.
I have a question for Danny. So, and we just had this conversation at the whole MAPC thing, the meeting that I was just at, and in regards to peer specialists, you have to have lived experience with a mental health, some kind of mental health thing in order to provide that service to others. And this kind of should be the same thing. I mean, that's my opinion. We're talking about peer-to-peer. And how do you become how are you considered a peer if you don't have that lived experience behind it? So my question to Danny is that correct? Do you have to have the lived experience for the peer specialist piece?
So in the state of Massachusetts, for me to be state certified as a peer specialist, I had to go through an interview process with the Transformation Center, who interviewed me and I had to have letters of recommendation to then get into the training, to then be able to take the training, to take the test. That's how vetted it is for certified peer specialists.
And so what exactly is a peer specialist?
It's someone who identifies as having lived experience with mental health conditions.
Okay, just for the people that are listening, so that yeah. So let me get this straight. So if that were the case for us,
Yep.
right, we would have an interview, right, with someone that would basically vet us and our experience, right, in recovery,
Yep.
and then go on to be able to take the training in that case, right? And so how is that different from what's happening now? I know, but I'm going to ask a lot of stupid questions because
You want the? I hand you a check. I want to be a recovery coach. Here's my money. I'm now a recovery coach.
You have a recovery coach certificate.
Yes.
So,
Now,
go ahead.
now that's what people say. I get resumes all the time that say they're a certified recovery coach. Well, when I email the certification board and ask them, they go, no, they don't have their CARC, so they're not a certified recovery coach.
So is this a question of people telling them that the training is making them certified, or is it is it a question of people calling it a certification because that's what it's called, right? You do the 30 hours and you get your certification for having taken the class, right? And then confusing that with, it's really the same kind of misunderstanding that we have with recovery coach supervisors and supervisors, right?
I took the class in 2013. I thought I was a certified recovery coach. I'm not going to lie. Like, I had a conversation with Julia when I started at North Suffolk, and she was like, no, my dear. You have a recovery coach certificate. You are not a certified coach.
Right.
That does not exist in the state of Massachusetts right now.
Right.
Yeah,
Well,
maybe it's mislaid. Like, they should clarify that.
Well, she made that pretty clear at the Moore event too. The public policy forum.
Yeah, sure. They now go out of their way to explain it because there's probably been a lot of people that think exactly what you said. I got a certificate.
So I'm certified.
I'm certified.
Yeah.
And that's so one of the things that came up at the last commission meeting was they basically unanimously said they all thought lived experience should be a requirement. But then they all crapped their pants and looked at each other and said, oh, no, now we have to decide what lived experience is.
Yeah, so one of the things I want to go into is they talked about specifically the charge of the commission is their standards for credentialing, right? So they have three things.
This was at the Recovery Coach Commission?
Correct.
Okay. That was May 20th, right?
On May 20th.
Okay.
And it says, is the current certification process in Massachusetts sufficient to meet the needs of recovery coaches and recoveries? That's one. Two, should the state oversee credentialing, discipline, and recertification? What should the appropriate recertification standards be? So those are the three questions they asked.
Those were the three things they kind of wanted to weed out all the other noise that people were bringing up and just focus back on what they were charged with from the governor.
So now from the minutes, there are specific listening session and panel presentations, general recommendations that they already have. And these are what they are. They have 5 bullet points. So this is what I take is this is what the commission already has is this is where we're going with things. That's what they are doing.
These 5 points that you're
Yes.
about to, okay.
Lived experience should be a requirement to be a recovery coach. Use of the title recovery coach is not regulated. There are concerns that some people only take the Recovery Coach Academy and identify as a recovery coach and subsequently are inappropriately hired for that role. Very, very true on that one. There needs to be a clear definition for recovery in certification. How do you define recovery? There should be a process for suspending certifications or overseeing corrective action when a recovery coach experiences a relapse or violates the code of ethics. And there needs to be a stronger recertification process for recovery coaches.
There isn't a recertification process now.
Okay, so let's do this then. Let's go back to those first 3 points. Right? What was the first one?
Aren't there 5 of them?
No, there were the
first three
The first
questions.
three,
The first
the first
three
three questions. Those were what the commission was going to address, right?
Is the current certification process in Massachusetts sufficient to meet the needs of recovery coaches and recoveries?
Okay, so let's address that.
No.
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 Katie.
So I want to focus on the recertification piece. But
Well,
one,
well, that's coming up.
Okay,
So let's
so-
let's do this now. Let's do one. Let's do one. I know you're chomping at the bit
Yeah.
to do the research part. But
so start with Dennis, and then I
Okay,
got to collect
Dennis.
my thoughts.
I just
read that question again.
no, I
wanna hear it again.
Okay, go ahead. You hear it again.
Is the current certification process in Massachusetts sufficient to meet the needs of recovery coaches and recoveries? So, as it's presently stand, you have to do 60 hours of training, 500 hours of supervised work experience, and 35 hours of supervision.
Okay, thanks, Danny.
So, all right. So for me, again, it goes back to this whole training process can be where are you getting trained, who's training you, where are you working, who's supervising you. So does anyone get this standard uniform training or standard of training? Or no, we don't all get trained the same. We don't get, it's not, yes, the requirements are the same, but the quality or the standard of training we're getting is not all the same.
Well, but here's the thing, right? That question doesn't really address whether it's the curriculum or the quality of the training, right? So we're all getting the same curriculum.
Okay,
Right?
so
We're all getting a certain amount of motivational interviewing.
Sure.
We're all getting Addiction 101, right? And then we're looking at people who are either getting it at North Shore, for example, North Shore Community College, or they're getting it in someone's garage.
all right. So can I ask you a question?
Sure.
What have you gotten out of the trainings?
That's an unfair question because I'm extremely intelligent.
Okay. Well, okay. So that's probably partly true. Also, I mean that's probably true, and some I'll give you that because there are
No,
probably
I'm just-
some
I'm just-
people.
I'm-
No, but there are some people that probably get more out of the trainings than others.
I'm kidding,
But-
and I think I get your point.
There's probably two trainings where I've think were maybe worth it in any capacity to me. That's for me.
But I think also going back to previous conversations that we've had on this show too, there's a certain amount of CYA in trainings like this,
get
right?
that. Yeah,
where
sure.
you have
Yeah.
to say, oh,
We
look,
trained
they were trained, they should know this. It's kind of like when you get a policy manual, a policy and procedure manual at work. You might not read it, right? I mean, I think you brought that up at
Yep.
at our show, but HR can go, we gave you this, you should know this, you're fired, right? Same thing with kind of like the training. Are you getting adequate training? So, I mean, do you guys understand that question as are the people who are getting certified as recovery coaches getting the same curriculum across the board or the same quality of training on that curriculum? What do you think the Recovery Coach Commission wants to know with that question?
So I feel like they want to hear, are the trainings that are out there now sufficient to work as a recovery coach, right? Do we feel like what we have in place now, that 60 hours?
So let me stop you. So in that 60 hours, does that mean that the MI is being taught or that MI is being taught appropriately to the people who are taking it?
So I think they just want to know that MI is being taught.
Okay. That was my question.
That's my feeling on it. Like, and I would go, we have to look at what other certifications are. You look at, I mean, what was the curriculum for, to get your LADAC, right?
Much more intensive. It's
Well, of course.
Okay. It was much more intensive and required more hours.
270 hours of education, 300 hours of a practicum.
Okay. But that was specific for the highest level of a LADAC, right? If you look at
LADC 2,
2, so if you wanted a 1, you could
which is
get
a master's degree.
Okay,
You need a
well-
master's
well,
degree.
there's one where you could get it with the hours you have with like the LADAC assistant.
yeah.
Okay.
So-
we're getting down. Yeah. All right.
It's what I'm saying is like the requirements.
But that's licensure, and that's under BSAS, which is what the commission charges right now.
Yeah.
The certification is similar to a CADAC, which you would have to complete your hours ahead of time before you could even apply.
So one of the things that was said at the commission was some of it comes down to the consumer. If I'm a consumer or somebody who is trying to recover and goes to a place like where I work and they get a coach assigned to them, I'm assuming that the place did their due diligence. And so I don't know how a consumer especially in this environment, in this field. There's so many people that try to take advantage of situations and, make money and all that stuff. If somebody, there's no level of certification. I just get a certificate. It doesn't say I have a certificate from Harvard. It doesn't say I have a certificate from Stanford. It says I have a certificate from BSAS or MBS, ACC, whatever. Everybody gets the same certificate. How is a consumer supposed to weed out?
Are you talking about the CARC or are you talking about
the CARC? The
okay.
CARC. So how is a consumer supposed to weed out whether Danny was trained as well as I was? Or, you know what I mean?
No, I agree.
How does it fall on the consumer? So one of the things that was said was we don't want to overregulate this at that commission meeting. We want to be careful. And look, I'm all for like the government staying out of shit, believe me. But on some level, I think for this, they have to do something.
Well, which goes back to Katie's original question on the clip that I played: is who's vetting them?
Yeah, who's vetting these people?
Because I mean,
they're going out of state to get
North
to
Shore
train the
Community
trainer.
College is not vetted by BSAS.
No.
I know UMass Boston is probably going to be rolling out a recovery coach curriculum in the very near future as well. I've spoke to Bill Kahlo about that on several occasions. He's asked me if I would facilitate trainings. I don't feel I'm necessarily capable. I've never been trained as a trainer. However, in certain curriculums, I could probably do a much better job than some of the trainers. In others, probably not. Like cultural competency, not my strong suit. Like I leave that.
Well, they only have one trainer for that, basically.
He's excellent.
So I mean, that's another thing. There's one trainer for that. So it's just, like how do they vet these people? And then all the people that aren't BSAS trainers, we know there's no vetting for that.
And that's really one of the only trainings I took anything out of. Like that's not how I learn in a classroom. I learn by observing others. And I said this when I spoke to you last time, I do my best work being observant in the community I'm in, or watching other people, or learning from other people's mistakes, or learning from my own mistakes and utilizing supervision appropriately. I don't necessarily learn in a classroom with people telling me, you need to do this, 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 and this. It makes me want to do the opposite.
Yeah, especially depending on who's telling you to do it.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, I've always had an issue with the motivational interviewing part of the training, that everyone's harping on motivational interviewing, and that they want more motivational interviewing, and we need more of this. We need 30 hours of motivational interviewing. No, it annoys me. And there's one person in particular who keeps asking for it, and I got a hair across my butt about it. I mean, I'm sorry. I mean, here's the thing, and I talked to the person who was teaching this at North Shore Community College too, and I said, look, you need to let people know that this is a tool for them to use. It's not the way that they have to do things.
It's not the playbook. It's
right?
not necessarily.
Because here's the thing, right? And, present company excluded or included. I mean, I've got a GED, right? And there are a lot of people, and so does Dennis. And there are a lot of people that are doing this work that haven't been to college and may not have even finished high school, okay? And you sit them in a classroom environment, and no matter how good they are at what they're doing and talking to other people and working in recovery, they're going to sit there, and now you're telling them what to do because you're giving them motivational interviewing, and you're basically saying to them, this is how you have to do your job. And then they walk around thinking that they can do something that they can't.
But even with the LADAC, there's so many different counseling styles.
Well, of course there are.
MI does not work for everybody. This is individualized, and you need to be able to switch in and out of different styles that suit different people.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we're on the same page. I mean, my problem is that they're forcing this kind of thing down people's throat because now MI is the brand new shiny thing to be doing, and it's like, what's next? Are we going to learn CBT or cognitive behavioral therapy for those of you who are uneducated and only have a GED?
Thanks.
Well, you could do the Smart Recovery thing, and that's REBT based. Good luck.
Electroshock therapy is the way to go.
I mean, what I'm saying is that throwing all this stuff at people, I think for example, Addiction 101. What else is required by the CARC?
Motivational interview.
Danny always knows.
Addiction 101, mental health and wellness, you need to have 16 hours of ethics and boundaries or ethical considerations for recovery coaches
Cultural competency.
and cultural competency.
Ethics and boundaries and cultural consideration, I think, are probably the two most important ones that you absolutely should have and be for like a CYA kind of thing, right? It's like, we told you not to sleep with your patients, you're fired, right? Because that's basically the bottom line, right? Don't steal, don't sleep with your people, and, right?
They need to bring in real life experience, though, because every arena you're in, ethics looks a lot different. I mean, across the board, like, it comes out of like morals and values and having a conscience. Like, that's where it comes from at its core. However, different arenas look much different.
For example.
So the hospital looks different than the House of Corrections. The House of Corrections looks different than the courthouse. Like, I can't go into the House of Corrections and touch somebody. Under any circumstances, I will not be allowed back in there. So I can't, if somebody goes to give me a hug, I have to back up.
And you definitely can't give them a ride.
But not that's called a getaway car.
Yeah, definitely can't give
But so here's a strange question, right? Is that, and I'm not trying to nitpick, but isn't that more cultural consideration than ethics?
It's probably,
I don't know. It's a boundary set by that institution.
yeah, I would think it's ethics. I get
Okay.
what you're saying because, like, it's culturally
Yeah.
but no, I would think that's a rule from the jail.
Okay.
It is.
That you cannot
Okay.
touch somebody.
Okay, fair enough.
It's not a disrespect thing. It's like from the inmate. That's from the jail. So that would be a ethic.
Yeah, because it's from the institution, not from
Yeah,
the
it's not
recovery.
from. It's not from
Stupid
the.
word.
Okay. Yeah.
So I'll give you guys an
I hate
example.
almost all the words.
I'll give you guys an example that I brought up in my ethical considerations class of when I was driving someone to detox, they decided to snort the last of their heroin in my car.
That's
And
what they're supposed to do.
what I brought up was I supposed to hit the heroin out of her hand while she was snorting it, or what?
Step on the brakes.
Was I supposed to pull over right then and there and call for an ambulance, or what was the ethical consideration there? What am I supposed to do? And it was like, no, you got her to detox, and you called your supervisor and talked about it.
Just hold her hair when she throws up. That's it.
There's a very large gray area.
Yeah.
And people need to learn how to navigate the gray area. That's why the lived experience piece is so vital to this, because this is not black and white. No. And people without lived experience live in a very black and white world 9%, like 9 out of 10% of the time.
When it comes to this.
Yeah.
Like,
Or 99% of the time, my bad.
So one of the first stories I heard when I became a coach was when I really knew this job was like a little different. And so Tito, he's been on the show before.
Yeah.
He was telling me a encounter he had with a girl. So he worked real hard to get a girl at bed and and he got the girl at bed, and it wasn't for like 2 days later.
when you say a bed, you mean detox.
Yeah,
so
detox.
We're clear on the
yes.
ethics here.
A treatment bed, yes. So he got her a bed, and then like for 2 days, this girl was going to be at home, and so we know she's going to get high. Like everybody knows that has like she was not going to stay at home and wait for a bed and not. So he came up with a harm reduction plan for her, kind of like, all right, you usually do this much, and have mom, like just had a whole plan for her to use in safety, kind of, and keep her not sick until this bed opened up 2 days later. And most people would look at you like, that's crazy. And like I heard that, and I was just like, wow, like I never would have thought of that. I didn't realize that's maybe the way we should be thinking. This was early, like real early on in my, but that's some of the things that we come across, like that's.
Dennis, I pulled a kid out of the ER because he was in there for 26 hours the night before, and they sent him back and handed him off to a greeter. And I went back 2 hours later. He's still in the waiting room. And I'm like, okay, here's what we're going to do. And I drove him to like 2 blocks away from his house, dropped him off at a liquor store, and said, we'll start calling detoxes tomorrow.
Who's there?
Because I don't want him to have a seizure.
Yeah.
And he got into a detox the next day, right? So, yeah, I know what you're saying. But
I mean, I've had numerous coaches, which is extremely unethical considering most circumstances, but like, same thing, bring people to liquor stores or, give them $35 for a T-Pass before they brought them to detox, or hold their EBT card. There's been numerous hold people's clothes and belongings, and like you have to be really careful with a lot of that stuff.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But it comes up because those are barriers that are going to keep people from going to treatment.
Yeah, we can't board dogs or.
No, I understand that. Like
I've had recovery coaches take people home.
Yeah.
Well, that's
They no longer work for me. However, and I found out later online, but yeah, like
there's a lot of stuff that comes up. Definitely, that can come up. So.
well. So then, okay. So we've talked about this, but so what does that mean?
How do you train that?
Right.
So we're talking about training and certification, and so I don't think that's something. This is like Katie, like lived experiences, and like they all, like I said, they all looked at each other at the commission meeting the other day when they said lived experience should be a requirement. They were like, "Oh my God, now we have to figure out what lived experiences is." And we heard at that multiple pathways training, lived experience is anything. Everybody has lived experience. Then why are we bringing it up then?
Well, I hear that
Then
too.
why are we bringing it up?
I hear that
like,
too. Is that,
why is sharing your lived experience so important if everybody is the same? Like,
right? I've lived too.
It's
right?
not. It's not.
No. And my question.
We
is,
all know what we're talking about when we say lived experience. We're certified addictions recovery coaches. Don't you think our lived experience should be in addictions and recovery and or recovery?
Right. And
Like,
and when people say that to me, like people in the clinical field, and they say, "Well, I have lived experience too."
Yeah,
My
what,
question.
cooking? Like-
Well, here's my question. Right. When did you puke out of your nose because
Yeah.
you were trying to keep those 2 first morning beers down? When did that happen? Right.
We all know what we're talking about. And I think we're in this environment where everyone's afraid to like set, like, no, you shouldn't be a recovery coach, maybe.
there's
like
a lot
that
of
type
people that shouldn't be recovery
Yeah, and that's
coaches.
like, and people will look at us and go, well, who are you to say that? Well, I mean, I could make a bad decision and next week I'm going to need a recovery coach. And do I want a police officer? Do I want some mother who lost her kid? No, I want somebody who used to shoot puddle water into their veins and like was sleeping on Boston Common and
Washing their hair in North Stations.
like that's I want somebody with lived experience, like a shared lived experience.
But so where's the disconnect then, guys? I mean, what's happening that we're I mean, that's the job, right? And
All right.
so what are they arguing at the commission that they're not really sure whether or not you need lived experience, or have they decided that you need lived experience and now they're trying to determine exactly what lived experience
So
is?
that's where it went. So they all unanimously said, they stopped, posed a question. They all said, yeah, lived experience, bing, 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 bing. And then they all went, uh-oh. Like literally, there was a pause. And someone said, well, what's lived experience? And they all went, all right, who's going to say it first? Because none of them, they all looked at each other. And even the recovery coach, Nico, he was like, oh, yeah. Like, he was even afraid to, like, pipe up and say anything. He was like, I don't want to alienate, so that's where they're at with it.
Like mine and Katie's conversation.
politically correct.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. Like, why are we – all right, we're in this position because I'm not going to say they couldn't do it, but these clinicians, it wasn't working out so well for them.
Not for the last 40 years.
Yeah, so like we're here for a reason, I think, right? Because we have a perspective on it, a unique perspective on this that they don't have, I would say, right? Is that why we're here, I would think? So what is that? It's not fucking motivational interviewing. It's lived experience.
And
right? I mean, come on. Like, it's not MI. It's not, like, they do plenty of MI. It's not ethical considerations. It's lived experience. And recovery coaching is, to me, and I said this to Danny on the way over, yeah, all right, it's different in different settings. It's all this stuff, but it's always about the exchange. It's always about two people talking.
What's the mutuality?
It's always about mutuality. And what a mutuality of two equals. And that's... like that is what this job is. And in different, like, I think if you get outside of that, that's when you can start arguing like, oh, it's not recovery coaching. Like, some of the things we get asked to do, sometimes I don't feel, but whatever. Recovery coaching to me is
You
always.
can say no.
I know, and I do. Believe me.
Yes, he
Plenty of
does.
times I do. Danny, not doing it. Not doing it. Like, I've gone to the director
Tell
of
Michael.
outpatient. Danny, I'm not doing this. This is clinical. Like, I tell him, like, I have no problem saying no. I have very strong boundaries and opinions. In case nobody knew.
I'm not comfortable doing that.
Yeah. No, please don't make me.
I've had those conversations too. It's like, I'm not comfortable with that. I'm not.
But that's,
I'm not gonna do that.
I mean, why are we here? Like, why are recovery coaches all of a sudden so important? If you don't say because it's for our lived experience, then I don't like know what we're doing. I find that hard to believe.
Well, and I would also talk about the guy from Learn to Cope who specifically said, I don't know if.
Oh, I was shocked. I was shocked to hear it from him. Yeah.
Yeah, hold on, Danny, go ahead.
He talked about specifically wanting people like an addict or an alcoholic, basically, or someone with lived experience.
Somebody in recovery, yeah.
In recovery, being a recovery coach, not necessarily a parent of a loved one or an ally in recovery.
They are too enmeshed.
Yeah, that's what
he said.
They're too,
it was we couldn't believe it.
they're still trying to get their kid clean. They're like, no, all due respect, but they're still like almost.
Their kid's still alive.
Yeah, that's what I mean. No, that's what I'm saying. That they're still, yeah, and
There's that, well, to use a clinical term, transference.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, so do you guys? Because I've been might be a little off track, but I've been asking myself this question recently too. It's because of your lived experience and because of what you've seen and what you've been through personally, right? Do you find it easier to deal with, as much as I hate this word, with like a recovery's quote unquote failure?
Of course.
Right?
Yep.
Like I get looks all the time. Like someone will call me up and they go, "Yeah, I used again." I'm like, "Yeah, so what do you want to do?"
So
Right? And I get looks from like clinicians and stuff, and it's like, what?
Yeah,
I'm like,
we talked a little bit about that on
Yeah.
our show. Yeah.
But I mean, I can use Chelsea as an example. Like the whole purpose, if you ask certain people for the Navigators grant, is to clean up Bellingham Square. And nowhere in their job description, because they're navigators / recovery coaches, does it say that they need to clean up Bellingham Square. And oh my God, what was the question?
Jesus Christ might not be able to do that.
But what was the question again? I forgot.
Are we better suited to deal with recovery's failures?
So there are people that have been out in Bellingham Square since day one. They're not going anywhere. How are you going to continuously take away their civil liberties and say you can't use here? Why can't they? If they so choose to, then like plant seeds. Continue to plant seeds and like help them be safe about it. So no, what do? You exile Healthy Streets because you don't want that harm reduction piece. There's no need for it in Chelsea. We don't need that anymore. And then you tell the navigators that, you know, you guys need to like clean this area up and like move them on. And it's like, that's never going to happen. There are people that have been out there for 20 years. They're not going anywhere. So how do we keep them safe?
Right. And keep them safe, get them what they need, keep them alive to be able to hear something maybe somewhere down the road.
If they want a pair of sweatpants,
Right.
get them a pair of sweatpants. If that's what they need right now, then that's what we help them get.
Right.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, obviously, like, I've failed so many times in my life, or whatever you want to call it. Well, that would be called failure, or whatever.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, that ambivalence, or whatever it is. Maybe my idea of okay wasn't always like up here; it was down there sometimes. So, yeah, like dealing with that is, I think because I was down there many times. So, yeah, I think we're definitely different, like equipped differently to handle that than clinicians or whatever.
to get the phone call and go, I used again. And I
Even
feel
deaf,
really
like I think deaf and like we become numb or desensitized to some of that.
I don't even know if it's numb because I mean I've had
just get a better way to deal with
Dennis,
it.
I've had 6 people die in the 2 years that I've been here, right?
Yeah.
And I kind of go, that's the way it goes. Yeah. It's not that I don't feel bad. It's not that it doesn't hurt me, but it's just kind of like you just kind of go, that's kind of what happens to us. It's not unexpected.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody on the way here, and like we kind of had that same conversation, and it's like, unfortunately, like I know I seem cold and calloused, but like some people die so that others that can live, and like sometimes you have to step over the bodies. And I mean, that sounds really, really, really mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
does.
You're a horrible human.
Yeah, no, but we understand it though.
No,
You understand
of course
it.
I
Yeah,
do.
that's-
But like, I don't know. Maybe I am just really, really numb to the fact that like people are gonna die, and like, how do you help them live? How do you even just help them exist for a little while if that's what's necessary for them to live someday?
Well, it's because Sandy B, and I think I've told you guys about. He's
Mm-hmm.
like one of my favorite AA speakers because it's not really AA. He says that whole thing. It's like war, right? You're at war, and sometimes people got to die for you to live, and you step over the bodies, right? Yeah.
Oh, I didn't hear it from him, but
No,
like
I know,
I'm just,
I know. I mean, it's not an uncommon term, but
Yeah.
I completely agree, right? And it is kind of, it does seem callous and it does seem cold, but it's like it's not unexpected, right? It's like when you're working and dealing and living in this environment in on this terrain, it doesn't really come as a surprise that someone doesn't show up to the meeting one day.
And if I
right?
said that to somebody like my mother, she would be horrified.
Oh, yeah, mine is too.
And my mother's been put through hell by myself and my sister.
Oh, yeah.
So she's like lived hell with us. But if I ever said that to her, she would be like, "Oh my God, Katie, what is wrong with you?"
I get the same thing from my mother. What's happened to you? I mean, I thought I raised you well. All right,
Dennis knows my mother.
Should we move to question number 2?
Hi,
Question
Donna.
number 2.
Did we even answer question number 1?
What the hell was question 1? Yes, no, I know.
Current certification process.
I know. We already.
So we can all, I guess we can all agree that we're unhappy with that.
I think there's room for improvement.
Yeah. I think we need better trainers. I think we need trainers that didn't learn the material the night before,
So-
or aren't reading out of the book on the same day and
Yeah.
and don't know how to pronounce some of the words. That
Keep
would
in
be
mind,
helpful.
this is new, though.
Yeah, and so obviously the demand has far exceeded the supply right now.
Has
obviously,
driven that, yeah.
and they were underfunded, and yeah, so like I get it. It's not all their fault, but I think everyone was so. Oh my God, recovery coach, and everyone needs one. All this money got thrown at it, and now training is it's kind of inadequate. We're not, they don't provide enough of it, and it was all over the place when we were doing it, and now it's because of that they now are doing it, at colleges, and it's popping up all because of that demand. And
Some of the trainers are excellent, though.
yeah, no, absolutely,
Yeah,
It's
no,
not-
absolutely.
Yeah, it's
I'm
not.
not. Yeah,
It's not a, but
It gets watered down.
yes, and I think the rush to, we've spoke about it before. You end up just the rush to meet that demand. Corners get cut, and rushed, and there's mistakes made, and things subpar. So it's not an overall indictment of the system, but there are definitely some things that could be better. There's no doubt about it. And for them to look at it and just go, "Oh, it's okay. There's holes." It's up to people that are consumers to now weed through all the muck and mire to get a good recovery coach. No, do something proactively to stop the crap.
right. And you're saying there's no, or I think what you were saying earlier was there's no way to differentiate between where you got your training in order to get the
Not
CARC,
from a
right?
consumer,
Right,
because the
right,
certificate
right,
does not.
right,
all
right,
it says
right,
is
right, right,
MBS ACC
Right.
and your number on it. So
Right.
I could have, okay. After no, there's no.
A consumer 2 weeks ago was just standing at the one
Yeah.
payphone that's left in the
I know,
Commonwealth of Massachusetts waiting for Flacco for 4 hours.
How
did they weed through that?
Exactly. Think about how desperate consumers are in this environment, whether it's families. Think about how much people are getting duped, whether it's by sober houses, treatment facilities. Like, come on, it's not up to them.
Yeah, well, there are
It's
any
up to,
crisis is going to bring cockroaches out from
Yeah.
under the rock. So there's no doubt about that.
Yeah, but if we know better, why not do better? Like not to be corny, but
Well said.
if they know there's a way they can do something to make this system better, don't just sit there and leave it up to the consumer to figure it out, because consumers are not in any shape to figure out what they're getting.
So, and that goes into question number 2. Should the state oversee credentialing, discipline, and recertification?
100%. And I think they're leaning that way.
And that will bring a level of oversight that MBSACC does not have right now.
Yeah, because as of right now, we know there's no. I mean, what is our recourse?
Yeah. So
For
what?
what?
For unethical behavior, for a coach that we know shouldn't, that lied to get certified, anything. What is our recourse for anything right now? Or a consumer's recourse? So what if I got a recovery coach that doesn't work for a facility? What's their recourse?
So it talks.
How do
about-
they file a grievance?
How do they file a grievance? How do they? There's not like I couldn't file a grievance against Katie right now. Like if I thought, there's no real process for that right now.
Yeah. So it talks about in
What would
this-
they do? What
Whose
could they
call
do?
is that?
Yeah. So if I called Julia or whatever right now and said, "Hey Julia, Danny was doing whatever," and she, "Oh, all right. What do they do? What's the next step from there? Do they pull a certification? Can they? Is that something that's even they're able to do? Right now in this environment, like I don't know if it is.
So what they're trying to address, Danny, is
what they're trying-
Licensure.
Yeah. So credentialing, discipline, and recertification. So is the state going to oversee, create a board of
ethics,
registry,
so, yeah.
have a board where if a complaint is filed against a coach, like they go before a board, just like nurses would. Or,
Consider it's
What about
similar
the
to
trainers?
the LADAC.
What about the trainers? Like we talked about vetting the trainers. What if we know they've done something? Because our supervisors. Even,
so
any of-
who's responsible for it now?
MBSACC oversees the credentialing.
well, and
piece.
it talks about.
Does anyone know what that stands for?
Yeah, Mass Bureau of Substance Abuse credentialing and
Mass-
counseling or credentialing.
Massachusetts Board of Substance Abuse Counselor Certification.
There you go.
Okay, you can move that mic too, Danny, if you want.
Yeah.
you
So,
go.
and then what it talks about on this, the standards for credentialing that the state put out is MBSAC does not offer functions that are typically included in state-sanctioned certification systems, such as a process for verifying whether an individual has been certified or a process for submitting and investigating any complaints. So it does not exist right now. So if I had a consumer that wanted to complain about Dennis, I'm the complaint line. There is no other credential,
We've had a couple of them already.
So it's going to die on my voicemail, and no one else. Normally you would, if someone complained to a director about a social worker, that director would then have to pass that on to the social worker. Like there's a process if there are complaints filed. There isn't one with recovery coaches that I'm aware of.
There is not.
No, and it seems like in a few of the other things you read, like the DMA, some of the results they got from their test, and some of the feedback they got from the panels and the listening sessions, I believe there's been a consensus that this should be developed, this board or some kind of disciplinary ethics, whatever.
It protects the paraprofessionalism of this.
So I will say that the application does say when you sign it for MBSACC, I acknowledge, understand, and agree that any falsification or misrepresentation of information by myself or others regarding my experience or qualifications will be a sufficient reason for disapproval of my application or revocation of my certification if granted at a later date. So
All right, but
they
so-
say that,
But we already know they don't look into it. We already know of a couple instances, Danny, that
I know of
GED,
Yeah.
GED situations, hours, being fudged, job descriptions being fudged.
But were complaints filed? That's would be
No,
the question,
but
right?
but
So
How
if
do you
that-
prove it?
how do they not catch that? How does somebody reviewing applications not know whether you got your GED or not?
That's a
Because
good
it's
question.
a one-person show,
No,
and she's
absolute 100
overseeing the LADAC as well.
That's what we talked about a little bit. Like, God bless that. God bless her. She's doing this by herself, and so it's not.
And she answers everyone, which I find
Yeah,
to be
that's
absolutely amazing.
God bless her. She,
Yep.
I'm not.
Yeah.
It's a bad system right now, and that's of course these mistakes. She got 170 applicants
170 in
at
one
the end
month.
there. At the end when the deadline was coming up. 170. There weren't even 170 coaches certified at that point. There was like 100, right?
Yeah.
So that's almost 400 times. Like her workload went through the roof
Yeah.
at the deadline. So imagine she's already swamped. Now she's getting her. So think if your workload went up by 400%. I'd be jumping out the window. So like the poor woman, like I
And
get
I
it. It's
feel
not her
awful.
fault, but the system is.
And now think about recertifications added to that,
Yeah, there
which
are
doesn't
things-
even exist.
There were
Go
things
ahead,
slipping
Katie.
through.
Chime in.
So hold on.
Question number 3.
Hold on. So around recertification, I just want to let everyone know that Katie's really wants to talk about this.
I do.
She has valid reasons.
I
though.
do. So there are 4 of us that are up for recertification. Well, one of my coaches was up for recertification in March, Jack
Due in
Harper.
August.
And there was no multiple pathways curriculum developed to that point in time. There was one, it was a couple of years ago, there was the one in Florida, but there was nothing for specific to recovery coaches. So what do you do?
The one in Florida with William White,
Despite the fact
right?
that
It's like a $600 plane ride and then
Yeah, that one.
$1,500 in
Yeah.
hotel rooms.
Yeah,
and-
That's
that
the one.
Yeah.
So
despite the fact that it's required,
You should have got it on
in
Travelocity.
research.
it is
cheaper.
required in the resort cert. So obviously, I made a big deal about it, and Jackie from MBSACC was very nice, and she granted him a 30-day grace period, and they got that training in before that 30-day grace period ended, and he got his recert in, and he's fine. However, I am right behind him, so my recertification is up in about, 2 weeks, and I need to take an ethics and boundaries class for recovery coaches. That does not exist.
ethical responsibilities for recovery coaching, and it has to be non-repetitive.
And
Yeah.
actually, but non-repetitive to them means a different trainer.
Different trainer.
Just so you know, as long as it's with a different trainer, it is considered a different training.
So it could be the exact same.
I could take ethical
Which goes back to
considerations again.
are we all getting trained the same?
So I could take ethical considerations again in Guam for 2.5 days, even though I only need 6 hours, and get that and use that towards my certificate. But that's not what I need. I need 6 hours in ethical responsibilities, and that training does not exist. And as a director, it's really, really hard for me to take off 2.5 days and drive to Springfield with 3 little kids at home and have somebody bring them to school and pick them up from school to go take a training that I don't need. So I just find it very frustrating that, like, I am probably going to have to apply for an extension and pay for an extension because this training does not exist.
And I don't know how they get away with asking you to do something that they're not providing.
$10 a month, man. They're tacking
So
it on
$50.
there.
Danny Rubenstein.
I was
or
assured
whatever.
by Marion Clark that it would be on the training calendar come July, and I was afforded a 30-day grace period, so I have until July 30th to find this training. However, I have asked everybody. I've looked online.
Are you holding your breath?
No, I'm gonna pay for the extension. That's what's gonna happen. They did make an exception for me. They told me that I could take the ethics and boundaries class for clinicians in Beverly that just passed. But they also told me, like, the day before, which is really tough. Once again, when you have 3 little kids at home that come from Braintree to Beverly, and on top of that, it was said right in the email, like, this is not for recovery coaches.
Yeah.
Right.
So they made an exception. I just did 2 years in school for my LADAC that covered every single thing that course required. Why can't I just use that?
Yeah.
I've also taken 42 CFR and ethics and boundaries and something else with the Gavin like a year and a half ago. So you want me
Yeah,
to pay
so-
for a training,
yeah.
take a training that has no relevancy to my job.
When you've already taken trainings that have no relevancy.
Well,
to-
so here's the thing, and I'm playing devil's advocate right now, right? So the question that I would think would come from that is you had 2 years to do this,
Yeah.
right?
I've been asking for months.
But the training doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist.
How can I take a training that doesn't exist?
If she had 5 years, it doesn't matter.
That
The
particular
training doesn't exist.
Does not exist.
The particular training that they're asking you to recertify for doesn't exist.
No.
Oh, terrific!
Thank you. Welcome.
All right.
Non-repetitive ethical responsibility for recovery coaching.
Okay.
No SO existo.
But I thought that it just had to be taught by a different person.
Okay, so does that make it okay just because you're taking the same training twice from 2 different people?
Apparently.
I don't want to take 2.5 days of a
So
training.
that
if I
says
only
the
need six
No,
hours.
I get it.
That says the state should overhaul the recertification process because it's
okay.
Well,
needs to
in
be
their
fixed.
defense, they said that they really didn't take any consideration into this because they were so focused on the grandfathering in period and didn't think that the recertification of others was going to come up that quickly. In my defense,
I'm glad they're
I
in
did
charge.
this in a very timely manner, and I got my application in before the first grandfathering in period.
Yep.
See why I never stopped taking trainings, Danny?
So I did everything I was supposed to do, and now you're going to tell me, and I couldn't just go to MBSACC and ask for permission. Like, they had to get permission from the president of their board. So I would say the power is in the board and not really in.
The final say's in the board. They can overrule probably some stuff.
Wow. Okay. Well, so let me ask you guys a question. So I work at Partners, right? We've got Mass General, we've got North Shore, Brigham and Women's, and Newton Wellesley, and all that. And we have experts in the field of addiction and motivational interviewing and
Says who?
and ethical. Says most of the experts.
Who's the experts?
The experts themselves. So let me ask, and they have grand rounds, right? Where you can go and you can listen to someone who is a particular expert on addiction or opioid addiction or opioids in the ED and
So I can go listen to Sarah Wakeman whenever I want.
or motivational interviewing or whatever. If she's doing a grand rounds, yes.
Name drop.
But here's the problem, right? This is what I don't get, right? These are some of the top experts in the field. They offer CEUs and SEUs for those particular grand rounds to clinicians, right? Why not let recovery coaches use those grand rounds also to at least recertify?
So they said if I could
Some of
come
them.
up with a training that was similar and that I could prove that it was relevant to my job, then I could utilize that. But I went to Hanier, I went to Julia, I went to Jackie Cummings, I went to Marion Clark. I said, please help me find. I've looked everywhere, a training that will help me.
Cover this.
Yeah. And not one of them could give me an answer other than it doesn't exist right now.
And then in the meantime,
They gave me a 30-day grace period.
but for the delay in general, it's what, $10 a month?
No, it's a $50 fee, and then I believe it's $10 a month after that
Yep. Late filing policy.
So we don't have the class.
for up to a year.
We don't have the class for you, but we're going to charge you for not being able
Hurry
to
up
take
and
it.
write a check. We don't have the class. I mean, I don't know how they can get away with that. Like, ask you to do something they're not providing. I don't know how they can get away with that.
So, and that's one of the recommendations is there needs to be a stronger recertification process for recovery coaches.
There's
Yeah,
only one person
but-
that's gone through it so far.
Yeah.
But now here's the problem. People have complained about the supervision piece of it too. Like, should supervisors have to recertify? And one of the things they said is, we are not the supervision commission.
Yeah.
Like, that's all right. Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Doesn't this fall under recovery coaching? Isn't this part of they don't. That's like, so obviously there's been some serious complaints about not complaints, but I guess similar type complaints as far as the whole supervision piece. Whether they're trained enough, whether they're that whole same complaints kind of we're coming up with as far as are the training's adequate or the and they I think they see that obviously like the Recovery Coach Academy maybe should be a requirement as well, not just the 3-day training for the supervision and that type of stuff. So they're starting to because some of the people on the commission are supervisors, but I don't think it's something they're going to address.
What's the what are the qualifications for a supervisor now?
take the training.
Well, it depends because it's supposed to be somebody that has been supervising somebody, but we all know that.
But there's no requirement for having been a recovery coach
No,
or
absolutely
even
not.
having taken the recovery coach
It's
training.
you have to have taken the RCA,
Well, it depends on
or
who.
you've taken the recovery coach supervisor's training. That's pretty much all that you need in order to supervise somebody, one or the other. It doesn't necessarily have to be, or to sign off on somebody's
Yeah,
application.
to sign off, I think you either have to have the CARC and be a supervisor, or
No, you
be a
just need
supervisor
the
and.
RCA or the supervisor's
I
training.
thought you had to have the CARC.
Nope,
Really?
nope.
So it's just
just
the
the
just the
RCA.
first 30 hour
Yeah, just the
RCA,
RCA.
and your title says supervisor.
Or the supervisor's
I got
training.
it right
Either
here.
or.
The supervisor must be a trained recovery coach and or have completed the recovery coach supervisory training.
So an LICSW that's taken the recovery coach supervisor's training is adequate to supervise
Well, but that,
recovery
and
coaches.
that happens a lot.
Always.
That happens a lot. I mean, my boss and I took that training, and one of the requirements was that you had to be a supervisor at the time
Correct.
that you were taking that training, and half the class wasn't, and it was obvious that they weren't, and that they had never been supervisors.
Yeah.
So the class is supposed to be about how to supervise, how to
make supervisors, recovery coach supervisors.
Well, yeah, how to adapt your supervision to recovery coaches, right, in that environment, and what that means as a supervisor.
Yeah, and we
right?
know there's people that have just now all of a sudden going to get a recovery coach in their city or their organization that have never supervised anybody that are now going out and getting recovery coach supervision.
I know
certificate.
recovery coach supervisors who have never been a supervisor and never been a recovery
coach. And I read somewhere, I forget, it's in one of the descriptions from whether it's BSAS or Mass Health or whatever. It says a recovery coach supervisor should be somebody that's been in the
Has more
profession as a recovery coach.
It's
So I should have been a
specs.
recovery coach longer than you've been a recovery coach if I'm your supervisor.
It's the performance specs
Yeah.
from MBHP.
All right, so that's what it is. Yeah, so it's Mass Health that has their own kind of, and they have a really good one for recovery coaching as well that I really liked. That they think a recovery coach should be somebody, a recovery coach supervisor should be somebody that has been a recovery coach, not just a supervisor, a recovery coach, longer than the person they're supervising, which makes plenty of sense to me and makes plenty of sense to most people, but it's not how, it's functioning right now. We know that.
Danny, what else we got?
Third one, hold on,
Oh, hold on, Katie, you satisfied with your?
Yeah, I think I made my point.
Okay.
It's frustrating though.
Of course it is.
Of course it is. Yes, it is. Very. Especially when, I don't know, it just should not be, not that it's super difficult, but it shouldn't be as difficult as that.
Well, even getting the second 30 hours was tough because if it hadn't been for North Shore Community College, I'd be driving to Plymouth and then to Nashua, New Hampshire, and
I did that.
yeah.
Me too.
I didn't even take half of the trainings that were required from the certification. They didn't exist when I did the certification
Right.
piece.
Yeah.
Like, so they didn't even think about that when they opened it up. It was like piecemeal. I mean, thank God that John McGann was nice enough to let me go to the Gavin and take trainings with them. Like, I literally got all of my trainings with Hanier through the Gavin.
Oh,
Because they did
them
me
all
a
for the
solid,
Gavin?
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they were doing their yearly trainings for all of their employees, and they were nice enough to let me sit in and train there because if not, I would have been driving all over the state more than I already was.
And I did. I went to Springfield for multiple trainings.
Yeah, I was
Is it just me, or does Danny have like just a really sexy radio voice today?
yeah, he has a.
He's being really quiet, though.
he has
I
a
am.
face for TV.
Uncharacteristically quiet.
No, I think I don't like to step on people's toes, but I think the one thing that I want to see how this commission is specifically talking about the thing that I dread as a supervisor, and I'm sure you two both do as well, is when a coach relapses. And how do I handle that? And
It's going to happen.
yeah, I know it's going to happen. I'm waiting for it to happen. And it talks about the general recommendations is there should be a process for suspending someone's certification or overseeing corrective action when a recovery coach experiences a relapse. And how do you handle that?
What are your agency protocols?
Yeah, exactly. So it's going to look differently, but this is talking about what the certification board would do in the event they knew a recovery coach.
So like a
relapsed.
nurse, if a nurse, gets high or relapses, they pull their license and all that stuff.
There's a fit for duty type thing.
That would be
or
what they're talking about.
Yeah.
There's a fit for duty clause in my workplace policies and procedures as well.
Yeah, that's. But
So
this is
obviously
from
I
the
have to
state.
follow that before anything else.
Exactly. But as a recovery coach, if they knew that and say that person went somewhere else to work or however that would look.
That's on the other agency to do their due diligence and call and do referral checks. That doesn't happen though.
I think because your agency could go, okay, let them still work with people, whereas the state who licensed us might
My
go,
agency
no.
wouldn't do that, but I
I'm
know
just
plenty
saying.
of others
Yeah,
that would.
that's what I'm saying. Like there are some agencies that might not treat a relapse as severely as another agency, and they might let people still see recoveries or
They might not even find out about
Yeah,
it.
that's. Or they might
Well,
not
yeah,
care,
they don't
or,
find out
whatever.
about it, or how they find out about it isn't a way that they can address it in a legal way as an employer.
Oh, I'm
right?
not saying that they shouldn't do it. I'm just saying that there are policies and procedures for every agency that we work for that kind of guide us in this process.
Yeah, but this would be I think what this would be like a nursing type thing where they could pull it for a little while, and
But they would only be able to do that under state licensure.
and that's what they're looking to do. That's what we're
Yeah,
talking
that's
about.
what the commission is leaning towards.
Right, because you
in my
really
opinion.
couldn't pull a CARC.
No, you can't. That's what we were talking. Like, how, what is the recourse?
And
right
even
now?
if you did,
What's the
it
recourse?
doesn't matter because you don't have to be a CARC to work as a recovery coach in the state right now.
No, you do not.
But if that becomes the standard practice where you have to be licensed to work to get, like we talked about a long time ago, if you're getting state money, the state is eventually going to say you have to be licensed, you have to be certified.
Or licensed within a certain amount of time.
Or, so if they start doing that and enforcing that because they're not going to give you money, then it's going to have to happen.
And do you think they're going to stick with something like the CARC, or do you think they're going to start having their own kind of
Well, I think the CARC
licensing
is going to
board?
get revamped too. That's the other thing. The grandfather period is over, so they're going to tweak the CARC. They're going to change it again.
Yeah, they now have the peer recovery exam to go along with.
So they're going to
trainings.
Is that true?
You're going to have to take a test.
Ridiculous.
That's
You're
what it's
gonna
called.
You're now going to have to take a test, a national test, and they're probably going to change some of the.
It's a national
trainings.
test?
Yeah, it's based off the national test. From what I understand, is that the IC and RC.
The ICRC.
Yeah, credentialing that does the national peer recovery
The
coach.
reciprocity.
Yeah, the reciprocity. Yes, reciprocity.
So what about people who already have their CARC?
We don't know yet. That's part of the conversation and
Yeah,
what's going to
I
happen.
would imagine
with the state.
part of it is going to be will probably be grandfathered to some degree, and we may have to.
It's going to
take-
be similar to the late act.
Yeah, we may have to take some extra stuff, but I can't
What if
imagine.
you're a
we're gonna-
recovery coach who doesn't has lived experience, and now the requirement is lived experience?
Bye.
Bye, Felicia.
Bye.
Well, so what do you guys think? I mean, so let me before you tell me what you think, let me throw this out there because again with Tito, right? We had a conversation. Guy who would have been a great recovery coach, but couldn't pass a test to save his life.
Yep.
Right. And I know that's rare, and I'm throwing out like just but as far as the state coming in and creating some kind of licensure. Requirement and things like that. What do you guys? How do you feel about that?
So I can say from taking the late act exam, which is through ICNRC, like the reciprocity board has something to do with it. I can't really explain what. That exam is extremely confusing. There are multiple answers that are correct for the same question.
Yeah.
What is the best answer? And it's on a national standard. So it's not what's the best answer in Massachusetts, what's the best answer nationally. So it gets really, really, really confusing.
Okay, but so I guess my question is that you've created a role that is by design non-clinical,
Yeah.
right? And should be easy to do, get, implement, whatever, right?
Why should it be easy though?
Well, it should be easy to implement, don't you think?
Okay, that's yeah.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, basically, we're talking about, and we've talked about this before on the show, and personally too. It's like if you were to look at my job, I go to coffee shops all day.
Yeah,
Right.
but you don't want to over professionalize it either, and you don't want to make it too difficult
Right,
to
and that's-
attain
and that's-
that
and that-
somebody can't get it.
But that's what I'm saying, right? So if you start creating licenses and exams, and you're giving the example of the LADAC, is that a road that we want to go down with recovery coaches?
No, we use what NAADAC, which I don't know that acronym. I'm sorry, I don't have that. But this is the
the one.
National Certification Peer Recovery Support
peer. Yeah,
Specialist.
that's the peer thing.
So that's what's used in a lot of states. That's the national one, and that's sort of they have comparison to the CARC right on here. And there's direct practice. There's lived experience for both co-occurring or substance use. There's specific trainings, and then the recertification process for that specifically says 20 hours every 2 years, including 6 hours in ethics, and you have to provide a work history prior to renewal and self-attestation of ongoing recovery. So you have to say, yes, I am still in recovery.
Yeah. So
People
it's,
are
get
in recovery
recertified.
when they say they
Yeah,
are. So
that's-
Okay,
that's fine.
Well, but also I think
but there is an exam too.
But the commission also discussed what they're going to define as recovery too, right?
Yes.
Wasn't
Yes,
that part
That
of
was
the,
one of the things, yeah, that they.
And what, did everyone freak out about that too?
Well, I didn't. Yeah.
That got into a conversation that they couldn't even
I think that's going to take some time.
Yeah, they're gonna have a hard time defining recovery.
So this is one of the things that I like. I love Massachusetts, obviously, but I think sometimes we have a high opinion of ourselves. We aren't reinventing the wheel here. People have been doing this for a while. There's 13 other states that already require lived experience. Look at them. What are they doing?
Right.
They've been doing it for a while.
Right.
Like, we're not inventing this. We aren't the first people to do this. So, like, they were sitting there talking about lived experience. Like, oh my God, lived experience. Like, look at what other people have done. Like, it's not that hard. Like, that's what that's part of the whole, like, we're doing this and, like, we're going to be. The only part of that we're doing that might be a little different is the insurance stuff right now. And that's, like, everything else has already probably been laid out for us in other places, and I don't know why they're not looking at that more. It doesn't seem like they are. I don't know what they're doing behind the scenes.
they did when they legalized marijuana.
Yeah,
They
I mean,
flew all
that's what I
over the
mean. Like,
place.
they aren't looking at it in these meetings. They're not talking about it. Like,
Well, they are after the fact. Like, this is what they pulled. This is what they just put up.
They're just bringing it up. They're just like, 13 other states do it. They're
This-
not going, this is what Colorado does or Nevada does, or
that's
this
what-
is the language that they use in their description of lived experience.
And
They've
this is
brought up Pennsylvania, though, several times, which I think is very interesting because I think that's a good model to replicate.
what I talked about.
Hold on, Danny had something to say.
absolutely.
And this is what I talked about at multiple listening sessions is they haven't, till last commission meeting, they didn't get into what credentialing actually could look like, should look like. That was never part of the discussion. They're just getting to that
Wait until the end.
the second meeting before the end of it, right? So that was my frustration is they had an hour discussion at this last commission meeting, and that's the only time they discussed credentialing. And they didn't even get there because they had to continue to ask questions about
they
the
should have known the
certification
answers to,
process
yeah.
that they didn't know the answers to because some people weren't there. I don't know, why they weren't able to be there. But, and then, whatever reason, none of my business. But then you got presentations throughout the last 6 months about the certification process and then couldn't answer basic stuffs about the certification process. I was so frustrated sitting in that audience. I wanted to scream about 4 or 5 times because
Yeah, it was a
people
tough
on
meeting. It
that
was
commission did not know basic stuff that they were already talked about to. They got an hour-long presentation on what the certification process is, and they didn't know the answers.
Yeah, I agree. It was
They didn't do their
definitely-
homework.
It was frustrating.
So let me ask you guys a question. Let's go back to the recovery thing, right? When you say, I'll speak for myself. For me, my recovery is abstinence based, right? I don't put anything minor mood altering in my system,
Yeah.
right? Dennis,
Okay, yes, I agree.
okay, Katie,
It depends on, so I started on MAT, so
Well,
whatever.
but what I'm saying is what are we looking for in recovery coaches, right? I mean, if we're saying they have to be in recovery, how are we defining that, and how is the commission going to define that, and how is the licensing board going to define
So
that?
some people where I've
Right?
read, someone who has a defined pathway, so whatever you video game, I don't care what you, but
Well, but I'm saying if I was drinking and smoking around the clock for 20 years, right,
Yeah.
and now I'm not drinking, but I'm smoking pot on the weekends, is that going to be well? But here's the thing, right? Is I look at clinicians and the medical community, right, and they harp on that recovery is abstinence. From whatever drug you're using, you're free of every single drug on the planet, right? If you are a heroin user, you're not drinking anymore, you're not smoking pot, you're not doing anything, right? And they're not happy until they have complete abstinence, right? So is that the same kind of thing that we're going to be looking at from a certification or licensing board when they start defining what recovery is in order to be a recovery coach?
for this job, I would think not.
Good luck.
For this job, I would think not. I don't think they could do it. And I don't, I just think with what we do, no, because we're required to, multiple pathways, recovery is, you define your own recovery. And I always, sometimes I wonder what road we're going down with all that and stuff. And sometimes it bothers me and I don't know what the hell I'm doing in this job sometimes. But yes, I lean to the side of whatever you're doing
Well, okay.
to make your life better.
I'm not really asking
And-
about what you think.
Yeah.
Right. What
do they think?
What I'm saying is what is the board? Because when working in a hospital setting with clinicians and the medical community, right, their expectation is complete abstinence.
I don't think they're going down
for the
that.
most part.
No.
You guys don't think the board,
No,
any
because-
kind of state licensing board is going to require?
No.
I think they're
So I-
100% behind MAT right now.
So I think they're going to go more towards the SAMHSA definition of recovery, which is recovery is defined as a process of change through which individuals improve their health and wellness, live a self-directed life, and strive to reach their full potential. It does not require you to stop using all substances.
Do you really think?
abstinent-
I'm kind of serious, but I'm also kind of joking. Do you really think the puritanical state of Massachusetts is going to see that as a legitimate?
Yes.
Yes,
Really?
Yes.
Yes.
I think
I
that
have
is.
no idea.
I think that is what they're going to do
because of
they-
the MAT piece. Yes, I do.
or just defining someone's recovery. If I don't shoot heroin, but I still smoke pot. I don't-
So let's just put it in the hands of the pharmaceutical companies.
No, and that's what I mean. That's what they're doing.
That's what happened with
So,
the World Health
listen,
Organization. So
I mean, I'm not going to get all but the state. We all see the state listening to these doctors, right? Like the somebody you brought up earlier, and like those people of the world, like they're leaning heavily on their opinions, and a lot of it is MAT, right? And who are the doctors in bed with? The insurance
Medicaid
companies.
supported recovery.
Yes,
Don't you forget that's trademarked.
Right. That's trademarked. And then the insurance companies are in the pharmaceutical company. It all goes back to like we're now leaning on the people that caused this to fix it. And
Exactly. So let's trust the people who
and that's
were a big part of getting us into this mess in the first place.
That's why I believe the state is they're all in. Everything they're doing, any BSAS funded program, you have to take people on MAT. Anything. It's all MAT now, everything. That's the first option, not the 10th option now. It's, you're getting clean.
Somebody says they're struggling,
Yeah.
you are required by your license to ask them,
to advocate for MAT or
or
provide.
if they would like.
to bring it up as an option.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
You have to.
to recommend it as an option.
whose license?
Like
BSAS.
where so just like I was saying, like a match certified house.
Any BSAS funded?
Yeah.
Or
I'm
recovery
gonna say a recovery home.
Okay.
Any-
And a
Yeah.
recovery home
Yeah.
that is licensed by BSAS, or you can get put into corrective action if you don't utilize that as an option.
And even think about
So even when somebody uses their own autonomy and choice and says, I'm going to up my meetings, I'm going to meet with my sponsor twice a week, I'm going to do this, and that's all documented. If there's not a documented piece in that case file about the person,
MAT, really?
you can go into corrective action.
No kidding.
Well, and even think about what the reviews for someone for a recovery coach in the concurrent review specifically mentions the person educated on MAT. Every single time you want to go for another 90 days of someone getting recovery coaching through Mass Health.
Except for Tufts.
Yeah.
Tufts doesn't ask that question.
That was specifically given as one of the clinical review things is,
Clinical.
yes.
Wow. Okay, well, we've wasted another perfectly good hour.
What was so good about it?
Oh, I'm asking you. Was there anything you guys? Did we miss anything on this one?
Plenty.
No, I'm serious.
Probably.
We can do this again.
Are you coming to the Cape with us on Monday?
Yes.
You can be the cabana boy.
Can we talk about this offline?
No.
All right, Dennis Doris, Katie O'Leary,
Certified.
Danny Ginivan,
Certified.
Danny Ginivan. Thanks.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks for doing the round table.
Always. The not so round table.